There is a hill in Westphalia where the compass of history was meant to stop spinning. Deep inside the north tower of a triangular castle, there is a circular crypt. 12 stone pedestals stand in the shadows, waiting for 12 urns that never arrived. Above them, on the marble floor of a grand hall, lies a mosaic that has become one of the most recognizable hate symbols in modern history: the Black Sun. This was not a bunker. It was not a command post. It was designed to be the Vatican of the SS. Heinrich Himmler called it the center of the world. And to build this fantasy of knighthood and magic, nearly 1,300 men were worked to death just yards away from the castle walls. The ruins still stand, but the thousands of silver rings that were meant to be buried here have never been found. Welcome to Wewelsburg Castle. When we look at the Third Reich, we usually see the machinery of war: tanks, planes, industrial slaughter. But there was another war being fought, a silent, ideological war for the human soul. The SS was not merely a paramilitary police force. In the mind of its leader, Heinrich Himmler, it was a holy order, a new aristocracy for a new millennium. And every order needs a temple. This episode investigates the strangest architectural project of the Nazi regime. We are looking at the precise plans to turn a Renaissance ruin into the capital of a global cult. We are looking at the rituals intended for this fortress, the geometry of its towers, and the disturbing legacy it left behind. This is the story of how a medieval castle became the dark heart of the SS. Heinrich Himmler first saw Wewelsburg in 1933, the year Hitler took power. It was a wreck, a 17th-century triangular fortress built by prince bishops, falling into disrepair high above the Alm Valley. Most military strategists would have seen a useless pile of stones. Himmler saw destiny. He was obsessed with the idea of blood and soil. He believed the region of Westphalia was the spiritual heartland of Germany, close to the site of the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, where Germanic tribes had destroyed 3 Roman legions. To Himmler, this wasn't just real estate, it was sacred ground. He leased the castle for 1 Reichsmark a year. His initial plan was modest, a school for SS officers. But as Himmler's power grew, so did his delusion. By the mid-1930s, Wewelsburg was no longer just a school. It was being transformed into the Reichsführerschule, a monastery for the SS elite. The architects were given a chilling directive. The castle was to be the geometric center of the new world. If you look at the architectural plans from 1941, the scale is terrifying. The triangular castle we see today was meant to be just the spearhead of a titanic complex. A circular plaza, 3/4 of a mile wide, would have surrounded the castle, ringed by massive buildings, barracks, and an estate for the SS aristocracy. From the air, the entire complex would form the shape of a spear, pointing geographically north. But the spiritual energy was focused on a single point: the North Tower. Himmler ordered this tower to be the axis of the Aryan world. It was here that the boundary between politics and religion dissolved completely. The SS were told to sever ties with the Christian Church. Wewelsburg would provide the alternative, a neo-pagan stronghold where the ancestral heritage could be worshipped. This was not propaganda for the masses. The German public knew very little about what happened inside these walls. This was a secret intended only for the initiates. The castle was closed off, shrouded in rumor, becoming a place where the reality of the 20th century was deliberately shut out, replaced by a fabricated medieval fantasy. To understand the depth of this obsession, we must go inside the North Tower, specifically to 2 rooms that survived the war, stacked directly on top of one another. The lower room is the gruft, the crypt. It is a circular dungeon-like chamber dominated by 12 stone pedestals along the walls. In the center of the floor, there is a depression for a gas line. The plan was to have an eternal flame burning here forever, a fire that would never go out, symbolizing the eternal life of the Aryan race. The acoustics in this room are unnerving. If you stand in the center and speak, the sound amplifies and surrounds you. If you move an inch to the side, it dies. This crypt was not for burial in the traditional sense. It was a reliquary. Himmler intended for the ashes of his most loyal generals, the Gruppenführers, to be brought here after their deaths. Their urns would rest on the pedestals, watched over by the eternal flame. It was a tomb for the knights of his new round table. Directly above the crypt is the Obergruppenführersaal, the Hall of Generals. This is the architectural zenith of the SS cult, a vast circular hall with 12 pillars and 12 window niches. The number 12 was deliberate, echoing the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 knights of King Arthur, and the 12 main departments of the SS bureaucracy. Himmler saw himself as a modern Arthur, and his top officers were his table of knights. In the center of this room lies the most controversial artifact in the castle, the mosaic of the Black Sun. It is a wheel of 12 dark green jagged rays, composed of sig runes, radiating from a central disk on a white marble floor. Today, this symbol is used by neo-Nazi groups around the world, but in 1941, it was a private, esoteric anchor. The symbol aligns perfectly with the center of the crypt below. The architectural implication is clear. The light of the SS leadership in the hall above was literally supported by the death and ashes in the crypt below. It is crucial to note that we have no evidence that a full ritual was ever performed here. The war turned against Germany before the castle was finished. The eternal flame was never lit. The urns never came. The Hall of Generals was never used for a summit. The North Tower remains a temple to a religion that never quite began. A hollow stage set waiting for actors who were busy dying on the Eastern Front. While Himmler dreamed of knights and grails in the tower, the reality at the foot of the hill was a nightmare of industrial brutality. You cannot separate the occult fantasy of Wewelsburg from the concrete reality of how it was built. The SS did not hire local contractors for their shrine. They used slave labor. Just outside the village, they established the Niederhagen concentration camp. It was one of the smallest independent camps in the Nazi system, but also one of the most lethal. Of the 3,900 prisoners held there, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet POWs, political dissidents, at least 1,285 died. They died from starvation, beatings, and exhaustion, hauling heavy stones up the steep hill to the castle. They were forced to quarry the rock that would line the crypt. The marble floor of the Hall of Generals, the geometric perfection of the Black Sun, every inch of it was paid for with the lives of prisoners whom the SS considered subhuman. There is a grotesque irony here. The SS envisioned themselves as a warrior elite, men of honor and discipline, protectors of European culture. Yet their Camelot was constructed by starving men they worked to death. The camp at Niederhagen reveals the hollowness of the SS mythology. The mysticism wasn't a shield against their crimes. It was the justification for them. The grander the temple, the more expendable the lives of the workers became. Himmler visited the castle often, staying in his private apartments, overseeing the design, discussing the Aryan root race with his guests. He could look out his window and see the smoke from the camp. It didn't contradict his worldview. It confirmed it. In his eyes, the castle was the future. The camp was merely the refuse of the past, being cleared away. As the war collapsed in 1945, Wewelsburg became the focus of one final frantic operation. For years, the SS had awarded a specific item to its officers, the Totenkopfring, or Death's Head Ring. It was a silver band featuring a skull and runes, designed by Karl Maria Willigut, Himmler's personal occultist. Inside the band, Himmler's signature was engraved. These rings were not state property. They were personal gifts from Himmler. And they came with a strict condition. Upon the death of the wearer, the ring had to be returned to Wewelsburg. The plan was to store these rings in a massive chest, a shrine to the fallen, located in the castle. By 1945, tens of thousands of rings had been issued. As the death toll of SS officers mounted on the front lines, thousands of rings were sent back to the castle. In March 1945, U.S. troops were advancing through Westphalia. The dream of the center of the world was over. Himmler, realizing the war was lost, sent a final order to the castle commander, Siegfried Taubert. The order was simple: destroy Wewelsburg. The SS planted explosives in the majestic North Tower and the main administrative buildings. But they had a problem: the chest of rings. There were approximately 11,500 silver rings in the castle vault, the symbolic souls of the dead SS knighthood. They could not be allowed to fall into Allied hands. According to testimony, the rings were taken out of the castle under cover of darkness. They were not melted down. They were blast-sealed inside a nearby mountain or cave in the chill of early spring. On March 31, 1945, Easter Saturday, the SS detonated the charges. The North Tower, built to last 1,000 years, was gutted by fire. The interior of the castle burned. The SS garrison fled, changing into civilian clothes to disappear into the countryside. When American troops from the 3rd Armored Division arrived 2 days later, they found a smoking shell. They found the crypt, they found the mosaic, but they never found the rings. To this day, somewhere in the hills around Wewelsburg, buried under tons of rock and 80 years of silence, lie 11,500 silver rings, a mass grave of metal. Today, Wewelsburg is a youth hostel and a museum. You can walk into the crypt. You can stand on the black sun. The acoustics are still there. The geometry is still precise. It is a strange, uncomfortable place. It stands as a monument to a future that almost happened. Wewelsburg serves as a reminder that the Nazi regime was not just a political movement. It was a cult that hijacked the machinery of a modern state. They tried to rewrite history, theology, and geography to fit a twisted vision of the world. They tried to build a Camelot on a foundation of bones. The center of the world is now just a tourist stop in a quiet German village. The eternal flame was never lit. The 1,000-year Reich lasted only 12. But the symbols remain. And in the dark corners of the internet and the fringes of political extremism, the black sun still burns. The castle was destroyed, but the dangerous allure of the myth, the idea that some men are born to rule and others to serve, that structure is much harder to demolish. Himmler's knights are gone, the rings are buried, but the North Tower still points at the sky, a silent warning of what happens when a nation decides to worship itself.